The Mountain Goats, Bleed Out, album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest from the Mountain Goats, indie folk legends all around. A cult favorite of mine, John Darnielle, one of my favorite songwriters of all time. I mean, their discography is just so long and so, for many years, consistent, and it seemed to have for many years a lot of different chapters to it. The early days of the 90s was very lo-fi, very DIY. In the early 2000s, a lot of their albums were incredibly consistent, and then around the time of the early 2010s, even though a lot of people were digging what they were putting out, it's kind of where I fell off for a while. But the mid 2010s, I thought, really showed the band turn around for a few years, and at least for my taste, made a little bit of a resurgence. I mean, at the time, they'd already put out so many countless classic albums, I thought they were winding down. But then I was completely enamored with the love letter to 80s and 90s wrestling that was Beat the Champ, as well as their No Guitars album, Goths. But once again, we have reached an impasse with the legendary Mountain Goats. I still retain my thoughts on In League with Dragons. It's fine. But the last time I reviewed them with Getting Into Knives, I really was not into what they were doing. So much so that I didn't even review their last album, but my morbid curiosity got the best of me with this latest one, which seems to be an ode to action movies. Yeah, it's always an odd theme from these guys. But you know what? I didn't hate some of the singles, so I figured I'd give it a shot, and it's just another very mixed bag from the Mountain Goats. Incredibly so. I do think that Training Montage is pretty good, though. Hear me out. As far as like a more upbeat, driven, and electric sound from the Mountain Goats, I don't think this is that bad. It's actually really punchy and gutsy and full of heart. It's the kind of track that I don't personally hate from the Mountain Goats, mostly because they leave it all out on the table and it is so full of emotion, and I do commend that. Mark on You is pretty good too, even though it did need to grow on me a little bit. It goes with a lot of the themes of the album, a lot of the songwriting tropes show up once again, which is something that I've always appreciated about the Mountain Goats. It's pretty solid. And once again, it just has some guts to it. But I actually think some of the deep cuts are some of the best ones. Extraction Point is freaking smooth. I mean, I really have to double down on that. This track is really smooth between the tapped drumming and the really, really cool saxophone. The track ends up being pretty hypnotic. Surprisingly so. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but John Darnielle is put center stage, and that's where he should be. Now, like I said, this is an album made up of action movie tropes, an odd theme, but they've made odd themes work in the past. But I think it actually works with their style and John Darnielle's storytelling. It's very confident, and it shows. I really like Bones Don't Rust, too. This track is a very dusty, bluesy sort of folk tune. It's sort of soulful, it's a little rustic, it's actually almost got some alt-country vibes, which is really well done. It ends up coming off pretty solid once again, with John's storytelling right at the forefront. Yeah, it's pretty darn good. And by the end of the track, the sheer drama that comes in is commendable. Also, I did not know I needed a Mountain Goats track about Rambo, but we get that with First Blood, and it's good. This may be my favorite deep cut here, and as far as a catchy tune goes, look no further. It's a great medium for the band. As far as like a folk rock track goes here, look no further. It's not like the band doesn't have plenty more to give. Make You Suffer is pretty great as well. It's focused, it's not completely out of their wheelhouse. It's a really raw track that continues with the themes of this album and is really passionate and well performed. I mean, you really can't ask for much else. The only issue with this album is consistency. Yes, there's a lot of very good tracks that remind you of what the Mountain Goats can do no matter what the theme of the album is or no matter where they are in their career. The only issue is the rest of this album I can't really defend. Wage Wars, Get Rich, Die Handsome. This was the single that broke me. I can't really defend this. Look, I do not mind a more guitar-driven tune from the Mountain Goats. They've proven they can do it in the past. But truthfully, this is a little too driven. This sounds like John Darnielle trying to push out a punk track, but it just ends up sounding really forced. It just takes away from everything that I love about the Mountain Goats. And the late tracks on this album just completely get me out of the great groove that I was in. Dies on Every Corner is so stiff. There isn't anything smooth or cool or focused about it. And because of that, everything else falls apart. John just sounds really awkward. This instrumental seems phoned in. And compared to the earlier saxophone, this just sounds goofy. With tracks like Hostages, yeah, I suppose some of the pieces are here. I mean, it's smooth and silky, but it's also inoffensive and way too gussied up. And I'm just not moved by this. This is kind of the epitome of what I'm not into with the Mountain Goats music at the moment. Did I mention this track is over 7 minutes long? Like, for what? Nobody wanted that. Need More Bandages isn't that good either. I mean, I'm trying to keep an open mind to some of their more electric and upbeat stuff. There's some solid tracks on here in that vein, and then I hear this. I feel like this is just not where I want to hear them. I feel like we've hit a wall, and even the songwriting and the storytelling isn't doing it for me anymore. Incandescent Ruins, very middle of the road. This to me, like, maybe it's not the worst sin committed here, but this to me also sounds like some AI robot, set out to make a Mountain Goats track. It's so paint by numbers. Bleed Out, this album's finale, I think it's the worst track here. By the time that I got to this track on the album after multiple listens, I felt like, I honestly felt like crying. This track is so boring, it sounds like pulling teeth so hard. For me, the storytelling hasn't worked for me on the last 6 tracks, but we've hit a new low here. And this ho-hum instrumental, this performance that doesn't have an ounce of emotion or passion, nothing seems to click on this track, and once again, it's over 7 minutes. Modern day Mountain Goats are still very hit and miss with me. There's plenty of material on this album. I would say about half the album is just fine. It's actually fun, it's well written, well performed, very passionate, even gutsy at times with, the same great tropes that you've enjoyed from them for years. And then the other half of this album seems to be, I don't know what to even say. It sounds forced. It sounds like the band is getting a little desperate to push out an album every year, which, why are you doing that when you have like over 20 albums in your discography? I just don't get it, and I'm not here for it. Oh, this album's tough. I'm feeling a very light 6 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.